the scalable aspect of the military, venture capitalists and starving scientists are going to marry up and have success in some areas. Yeah, some areas. One thing you have to wonder is what will happen if the administration changes, because this is very much a civilian, politically appointed, and or senior commander-driven effort, and all these people will leave. So that's an issue. Yeah. Yes, there's a few over here. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had several questions, but one thing, I mean, you mentioned how much you had worked in the Department of Defense in the 90s, and I think overall in America there was just a lot of people weren't really realizing the scale of the energy problem in general. But you said that they never even mentioned these things in QDRs. Was that something like a groupthink thing, or did people know about it, or the civilian leadership didn't want to provide leadership in that area, so they just didn't talk about it? Was there really an underlying acknowledgement of these issues then? What's your feeling about that?
Yeah, I actually have asked this question too, and in looking back at the documents, I mean, to be fair, that there's a Defense Science Board. It's kind of an internal think tank in the Pentagon, and they are tasked with doing reports. And they did 2 reports on energy in 2001 and in 2008. So as early as 2001, they were very aware of all the issues, and they were telling the Pentagon what to do. But you had to have a change in Congress as well. You had to have a new mandate, which came in 2009 with the Defense Acquisition Act. And also, to be fair, the 2005 Energy Security Act that came out of Congress actually propelled some of this going green. And I'm now still in the 2000s. But the military has, in some ways, recognized this issue for quite some time. They've had a geothermal plant at the Naval Air Weapons System at China Lake since 1987. Nellis Air Force Base in southern Nevada has a photovoltaic solar array supplying 1/4 of the total power of the base. And in the Clinton administration, there was Sherry Goodman. She was in the Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition and Technology, which is now AT&L, logistics. She was in charge of installations. They recognized the installations problem a long time ago within the United States. But it didn't get this kind of push like it has in the last several years. And I think it has to do with, I think first, I say that the politicians came along and created the strategy, but a lot of what comes in our strategy documents comes from the bottom up. The military works from the bottom up, right? You identify problems from the bottom up a lot of times. It's the deaths in the field. It's the supply line problems in Iraq and Afghanistan. So, in a way, those 2 wars really put the numbers and the costs very clearly in everyone's mind. Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I had a separate question. I'll wait for you guys to ask.
Well, I'll take it and save it and hear a few at a time. How about that? What's your second question?
You mentioned the Navy as a leader, and I know the Navy led particularly in nuclear power. They began with their submarines and aircraft carriers. And it's got a lot of bad press in the past, couple weeks. But I was just wondering, is the Navy really looking to expand nuclear power in their ships? Traditionally it's always been submarines for obvious reason, because a nuclear submarine can stay underwater for as long as it needs to.
Yeah.
But maybe looking at putting it on more surface ships. Yeah. And also maybe the Navy has a lot of experience with the smaller modular reactors. And in the civilian nuclear industry, they have these humongous nuclear power plants that are extraordinarily expensive to build. Maybe transitioning that technology from a ship to a land-based application. I mean, is that something that's been spoken or talked about?
I have a short answer. I don't know. Maybe this did mention you wouldn't take nuclear out of the mix. I'm going to have to check up on that. And I'm going to have to do it before and after.
Yeah, I mean, the Navy has a pretty good safety record with nuclear. They haven't had any big problems in 50 years.
The private sector is looking into small nuclear.
I know they are, but I'm just wondering if that maybe there's a connection between the Navy and...
That's a good point. I don't know that. I'll look at that. I have to do research on that. We had one in the middle and one in the back. Yes. Yeah.
It seems like the timing of this agreement
And
with
then
the
Dr.
military has happened simultaneously with the privatization of a lot of military functions, especially logistical support functions. And I'm wondering if you looked at a lot of those to see if similar greening is happening there. It seems like there's almost the antithesis of what you're talking about is happening there, because there's all these cost-plus contracts that are inefficient and not a lot of local sourcing. So if you could comment on that.
Whether the Pentagon is kind of outsourcing?
Whether the privatized functions of the military, you're also seeing some energy efficiency emerging there.
Oh, that's a good question. You guys answer good. You guys ask good question. Okay, and then there was one here from Mr. Grockle. Yeah.
You had shown a naval vessel, and you said something about over its lifespan it'll save $250 million in fuel and so forth, and a lot of fuel efficiency concerns go into these. Is the military mindset is that would justify, will that ever pay for itself? Is it, or is it that money is no object, capital cost doesn't make any difference, the point is it's going to save fuel, it doesn't make a difference what it's going to cost? I mean, what is the general mindset?
Cost in terms of, you mean will they appreciate the savings?
Well, will that over its useful life, that more expensive technology ever, will it save more than $250 million? Is it a cost neutral evaluation, or is it something that doesn't make any difference? The point is it's saving fuel. Is it a publicity stunt,
yeah,
or is it for real?
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I have actually asked that question myself. Okay, so to go back, I feel like I can say I don't know, but I'll attempt to answer. I already said I don't know on nuclear. I'll look that up. Nuclear power on ships. That's a good question. And platform surface ship. Privatization. That is also a good question. Have we held up our private companies? I could ask somebody here who might know a little bit, who was in Afghanistan. Have we held them up to the same standards of energy efficiency? I know that those trucks are also driven. Those IED casualties are not all active duty. A lot of those are private, right? We hire out private firms. Private being American firms, and private being those, pro-Pakistanis. So, and are we holding them up to energy efficiency standards? Yeah, they're running our kitchens, our latrines, that's a good question. I suspect now with new contracting rules and new matrices and that's all come under this new office that Sharon Burke runs, just since 2010 she landed in her position, so not that long ago. I suspect they are having to scrub those budgets and look at those figures and decide whether they're meeting. Everybody has to meet energy efficiency standards. And for the third question, is it a publicity stunt? They have been accused of the USS Makin Island, although there's a second ship now, of this being a publicity stunt. But they're doing crazy things on the ship too. They're like recycling seawater, salt water, and they're drinking it. So the desalinization process is on the ship. They're recycling everything. So it does seem to be a change in culture. Is the $250 million figure cost neutral? I suspect RAND would argue not, if they start to calculate in all the costs of the biofuels. I think there's going to be a mix in the beginning of all these efforts of a little bit of propaganda, a little bit of salesmanship. But Secretary of Navy does a very good job. I mean, he is everywhere. He is speaking almost every other week at major conferences all over the United States. Plus he's traveling all over the world talking to other countries about this.